everybody. Welcome back to One True Collector. This is the show for anyone who likes to collect anything, whether it's rock and roll memorabilia, old movie posters, sports cards, classic cars, records, tapes, anything that you like to collect, you're in the right place if you're watching this show. This is a special episode. We had a lot of requests after the last episode to find out more about Northwest Metalworx Records and the book that they're writing and some of the stuff that they're putting out. So I've got a couple of guests with me here today, and I'd like to introduce them to you. We've got James and Jim from Northwest Metalworx. Everyone say hello, and we're going to talk a little bit about what they do and the book and some of the records they've got coming out. So let's start with James here. Tell me a little bit about how Northwest Metalworx got started.
Well, I'm a Northwest guy. I grew up in Portland, actually, a little bit south, and saw a lot of shows growing up and had friends in bands and so forth, and was always, following the scene and digging a lot of the, especially hard rock and heavy metal music has always been my main love, my first love, and I worked in doing some writing and publishing and published a magazine and some books for a few years, and in a different field, horror fiction and film and media and so forth. And
cool.
And I've long been a record collector and a fan of the music. Those kind of my two loves. And so I've been kind of thinking about, I'd started writing a couple music articles for a couple different publications and started thinking about the idea of a bigger project. And that's where the book came about. And I'd seen other books on the history of the scene, and most of it tended to focus on other genres and kind of skip over the metal, which we had, of course, as you know, a huge scene in the Northwest, especially in the 80s. But, throughout the years, there's always been a good following. And it just seemed like there was a need for this book to document this piece of history. And many, certainly people know of some of the bigger bands, but there was just hundreds and hundreds of great bands, and I think a lot of them have been forgotten. So this was a way to kind of bring that about, to do a really cool overview of this, and then it kind of just blew up from there.
Awesome. Yeah, there certainly has been a need. I've read some of the other books that I won't name right now, but they're on my shelf, and yeah, you've got a massive tome of information that dedicates 3 pages maybe to the Northwest metal scene.
Yeah, sure.
And I could imagine that taking all of the great bands that we know and love from this area and putting them into a book, it'll be a tome twice as thick as some of those other ones.
It's definitely going to be that. We're about 90% done on it so far. There's tons of imagery. We have many pictures that are stuff that people have never seen. Wild Dogs and the Bondage Boys, a couple here. This is a photo by Bret Hartman, and this was Wild Dogs signing at Easy Street Records in Bellevue for their first album. Here's Matt McCourt, the singer, with Dan Kurth, the bass player. He's carrying, they're kind of goofing around, and that's Jeff Mark in the background. This is the Bondage Boys. And on the left is Gustav Malik, who's later changed his name to Tammy Down and formed Faster Pussycat Down after he moved to L.A. So this was his first band, Bondage Boys, and they were a pretty interesting band that pushed the boundaries quite a bit. These were 2 brothers, I believe that's Jesse and Ron, and Vern White, later of Mace, and he was also in Pleasure Elite, was a band of his in the 90s. It was really cool. Ron and Jesse went on to form the band Second Coming.
Oh, right, okay.
That was a cool band as well, kind of in the grunge period of the 90s. One of my co-writers on the book and one of my label partners, Brian Nairn, was able to purchase this photo, the very first photo taken of Queensryche after opening up for Zebra at the Paramount in 1983. After the 206 EP that Kim and Diana Harris put out, and that's all the guys, of course, Jeff and Chris and Scott, Eddie Jackson, Mike Wilton. That's Diana Von Harris, who is married to Kim Harris, and originally she was married to Niles Von Vo, who was part of the Von Vo management company, who managed Stryker, was one of their more notable acts. And that's Bo Phillips from KISW. After this show, they got signed by EMI to a 7-album deal. There'll be flyers,
I know that poster.
Bret Hartman, he put on this show, Heir Apparent headlining, after their first album, but before Paul Davidson left the band. And then Gypsy Rose was actually formed per Bret's encouraging Tim Brandon to put something together, and he put him on the bill. So Tim's band, Juvenile, had morphed into Sentence and then broken up. So he put together this lineup with Brock Grau, who'd played on Lipstick on a couple demos and was in Phase. And it featured Mike Gersam on drums, who later played with LA Guns, and Mike Starr from Alice in Chains.
Oh.
For about a month, Jerry Cantrell joined the band.
Oh.
And Jerry unfortunately stole away Mike Starr, and thus was the genesis of Alice in Chains, which was originally Diamond Lie. And in fact, Tim actually produced the first Alice in Chains demo for Lane Staley. So
I have that.
yeah, the 3-song Lip Lock Rock. And
Yeah.
Leather Sponge was sort of a joke band with a couple of the guys from Upper Echelon and the Squirrels, and then Bret Hartman on vocals. And it was sort of a Spinal Tap parody band who they claim predated Spinal Tap's movie. Yeah, there's ticket stubs, buttons, all kinds of stuff, t-shirts, and pretty much it'll be, a representation of that, but I also have over 60 interviews with musicians throughout the scene, everybody from bigger names to much lesser known people, and kind of shine the light on everybody and really, painting a picture of the whole scene.
So, big bands, little bands, all kinds of bands in the book there. You know that a lot of people who watch my show are fans of a particular environmental, face-painted, theatrical band that The Rocket called one of the biggest and most important cult movements in local music. I understand you guys are going to have a section on our favorite,
Yes.
R.I.P. in there.
Yes, as you know, of course, we did an interview on the phone a while back, and that was a lot of fun, and I think R.I.P. is a very interesting band. I know you guys played a lot of cool shows. I knew a few friends that had saw you guys and thought you were pretty cool, and you play with Sleep Capsule and Rottweiler, a lot of different guys, so there's some cool diversity there, and having seen you guys practice recently with your lineup, I'm really looking forward to catching a show from you guys, and I think that you guys, it's kind of fun to have, everybody in there. I mean, that's what I wanted to have, was every single band. Now, of course, some of the bigger, more well-known bands, that had a lot of albums will have maybe a longer chapter, just because there's much more there as far as trying to tell the story, but we're trying to give everybody some credit and due. So even there was a lot of bands that just formed briefly with friends, like, hey, let's do this side thing to compete in a battle of the bands, or maybe they tried something that didn't quite work and some people went on to other things. So there'll be bands that a lot of people have probably never heard of, and probably people that even saw a lot of the shows may not remember some of these bands. But I think everybody's valid because they contributed something, and it might be that one band, even if it was just a cover band, might have influenced, Metal Church or somebody else down the line. So I think it's important to have it be as complete as possible. And it's also got a discography of music, including demos and anything that was sold, or, bands that had even demo tapes at shows and marketed this stuff. Concert listings, the whole gamut of it. And the focus is from 1970 to 1995, so it's 25 years of the very start of bands that were starting to cover Sabbath or Zeppelin or whoever, on to, Heart and Queensryche and so on down the line. It's been a lot of fun. It's been 2 years in the making almost at this point, and if all goes well, we will have it out this fall.
Well, that's excellent. I can believe it's taken a while. It sounds like it's a massive undertaking.
It's been a huge undertaking, and this gentleman sitting next to me is my friend Jim, is one of the people that's been working a lot on the book with me. He's been writing some chapters. He's a longtime fan of the scene as well.
All three of us, James, myself, Brian, we were all independently starting to develop books. And by chance, I met James at a Seattle record show. I was wearing a Culprit band t-shirt. And he goes, Culprit! And we got talking, and I shared with him my love of the East Side bands, Heir Apparent, Overlord, Q5, TKO. And I told him that I was starting to put something together with that, and of course the whole Lake Hills legacy with all those bands. And And so then he shared what he was developing, and then I met Brian at a record show a couple of shows later, and we realized that James was way ahead of us. But he also had the better idea of doing the entire Northwest, where I was just focused basically on the east side of Seattle.
Yeah.
And so the direction it's taking is much more comprehensive.
You know, I had another friend, Brian, who unfortunately wasn't able to make it here tonight, but he was actually the first guy I called when I thought about doing this book a couple years ago. And he's been a huge collector. He saved everything. He has a huge record collection. He has, tons of flyers. And he also knows a lot of people in the scene and other people that saved a lot of stuff. And so a lot of people have contributed to this. James Tolan is a guy who was, manager of his friend's band, Overlord, but he was involved in the scene very much and friends with everybody, and he saved everything. He's a huge archivist and has a huge collection of stuff. Brett Hartman's been another friend who's been, amazingly helpful in this book and come up with a lot of great materials and was involved in the scene and did a publication, a metal mag that was very early in the scene, and then a lot of the band guys have donated materials or sent pictures or so we've just been able to collect a lot of great stuff for this, and we've had people that we've gotten just about every issue from the Rocket, so we could kind of delve back and between all the flyers and the Rockets and everything we could find for information from everybody, we put together 30 pages basically of concert listings, and so it's pretty extensive in this, and it's just been a really fun project. It's something that I've loved. It's something that we could give something back to people. They've given us a lot of entertainment and fun. So, yeah, so it's been pretty cool. It's been something I've kind of wanted to work on something like this for a long time, but I don't think I would have been ready until now. It's just probably the biggest thing I've ever tackled. So that's awesome. That's our whole goal, is to have fun and to be able to create something cool. And I had a couple buddies, I had a friend that was in a band called Cruella, which is one of the releases we'll be doing actually in early 2017 for a 30th anniversary. Much like this first album that we did, Heir Apparent, was a reissue 30 years later of their first album that was only released in France. And we restored the original cover art as they changed it over there without telling the band. This artwork is actually Matt Bazemore, who did some artwork for Queensryche as well on The Warning and designed some stuff for them for Rage for Order. We were able to get a transfer from the original master tapes that were baked, and so the sound quality is really good on it, and the band guys are really happy with it. Everybody's just loved the release, so it's a really nice one to kick it off with. And we've already got 2 more records that will be out next month. Heir Apparent came out in February, and already it's doing really well. And I've got a little test pressing here of, this is a band called Whizkey Stik, who's going to be kind of new to a lot of people, I think, but they're actually a band that formed in 1973 and lasted till about 1981. This KGUN radio station out of Portland had a couple compilation albums. They kicked off the first one. They're a very Deep Purple Rainbow influenced band with a Hammond B3, Highway Star, Speed King kind of stuff, but all original stuff. Which of course nowadays everybody loves that stuff, so it's perfect to go back and say, hey, there's this really cool band that had great original stuff. They had all the original master tapes, and we used a gentleman, Tony Reed, who's just a phenomenal engineer. He plays in a couple bands. Moss Generator, his main band, does Stone Axe, and then he's also gone in and taken some stuff like Necromandus that Tony Iommi produced that was supposed to be an album but never actually came out. And so he's a guy who likes to recreate the 70s stuff. He took all the Whizkey Stik stuff and mastered things and cleaned them up, and just the guys from the band were so happy with the stuff. It sounds so good. And we're doing a reissue of the Overlord EP, Broken Toys, the Seattle band that was kind of a precursor to the grunge scene, very influenced by like Angel City and the Stooges and early Alice Cooper, but kind of broke up before that whole Green River, sort of Soundgarden kind of stuff started happening. So just a little before their time, and they did a great 5-song EP. It's a great collectible on the market. A lot of punk and metal fans still revere this EP, and we're doing an expanded edition, 6 songs added to it as well
Bonus
as the original
songs,
5. Yeah, so it'll have the 5 songs from Broken Toys, On the Edge from Northwest Metal Fest, which is a real popular song from that album, and then 5 more songs that have never been released. 3 songs from Mushroom Studios from 1984 session. That was one of the last, if not the last thing I think they actually did. And then a couple other songs from 1983 that were done at a different time.
Awesome.
And it's all really good. That's going to be out, the Whizkey Stik and our compilation album that features Heir Apparent, Overlord, Cruella's on it, the Whizkey Stik guys, Taste of Iron, Tacoma, female-fronted band, kind of in the Hellion, DC LaCroix sort of vein, is on that. Assault and Battery is a thrash metal band, you know. Glacier was a Portland metal band, kind of in the Maiden Priest sort of realm. They were really cool. Wyndham Hell, which was a cool, we got an early demo from the first demo tape that he did by himself with doing all the instruments and everything. It's kind of a almost progressive black metal, I guess you would describe it.
Yeah,
pretty interesting stuff, early 90s. Live Overlord track, so that's there's a couple things on the album, like the Heir Apparent is the demo version of We the People with Paul Davidson, before one of the last things he recorded before leaving the band.
Oh, that's an awesome track.
Yeah, it's only been on the German import CD that was a reissue a few years ago. The Whizkey Stik track is an exclusive that's not going to be on the album. There's a band called High Voltage from Portland from the 70s, not the AC/DC cover band, that was really cool. One of their members towards the very end that played 5 shows with him was Pete Holmes from Black and Blue and the Wild Dogs. So he played drums with him on a few live shows before the band broke up, and then he ended up going off with the guitarist and one of the other members into forming a couple other bands that kind of shot out of that. And so they're kind of a real Whizkey Stik in early 70s kind of one. And then we've got some 80s stuff. We've got Outrage was kind of a sort of a Dokken-esque hair metal band in Portland that was really popular in the 80s. And they have a singer that kind of sounds like the guy from Cinderella. It's really cool. Tom Kiefer kind of sounding guy. We've even got a song from H.D. Gray, Howard Gray, had a band called Steel Sea, and he's Kelly Gray's brother from Myth. And Kelly plays guitar on the song. And so it's a really cool kind of Myth-like solo in the midst of this song that's sort of a Van Halen-esque kind of thing. It's a cool sampler. It's going to be the first compilation. We plan to do one maybe every year, every other year kind of thing. And we're hoping to include each time a handful of bands that we're doing releases from as a nice little way to have some bonus stuff. And we've got some other stuff in the works, but the ink's not been put on the contracts and anything finalized, so we can't quite talk about that stuff yet. But we've got these 5 releases, and as I said, compilation Whizkey Stik will be out next month. We're hoping to have Overlord in September, if not early October by the latest, and then Cruella we're looking at an early, maybe January, February kind of release in 2017. The book we're looking to have out in September or possibly October at the very latest. So we've got quite a bit of stuff in the works with it.
5 things I can't wait to have in my collection. All 5 of those.
Wonderful.
In fact,
wonderful.
As you know, I was as soon as I heard that there was pre-sale going on for these things, I was the first one. I don't know if I was the first, but I went right to your website and booked a copy of every single one right when I could.
We very much appreciate you, Dee, and I think very happy you like the Heir Apparent release. We won't play it on camera, but I'm happy we can throw on the Whizkey Stik if you want to get a little taser. And
you guys, you won't get to hear it because of copyright restrictions on YouTube, I'm sorry to say, but we are going to spin that record as soon as we're done here.
We'll have some stuff very soon about that. So, and one thing I want to mention too, because of course your show is about collecting, is there will be a lot of collectibles in this book. I mean, kind of mentioned some of this stuff, but there's also a lot of very rare records, demo tapes and things that a lot of people had never seen or were not aware of.
So it'll be a real good guide for anyone who wants to collect Northwest rock.
We've got some one-of-a-kind items that will be in there, and we actually will be doing a couple concert events, one up here in Seattle and one down in Portland, and in October, mid-October is what we've got going. We haven't yet announced anything, so we're also going to have a couple book and record release parties at Georgetown Records, Fantagraphics, and Music Millennium in Portland.
Awesome.
So most likely we'll be around the concert dates, and we'll be inviting a lot of the musicians that have interviewed and so forth for the book to come down and hang out and sign stuff if they want or whatever. So it should be a good, fun party, celebration of Northwest hard rock and metal, and what a great scene we've had. And I have a present for you. This is one of the unique things that will be in the book, and we'll probably do like a display case stuff of some of the, more unique stuff, but this is actually a brick from the End Zone.
The End Zone. Oh, yeah.
So the End Zone was a short-lived music venue in Kirkland that was actually an arcade, and it was in an old grocery store. And so they turned it into an arcade in 1981, and in the fall, they decided to do concerts there. It only lasted for a handful of months, but there was some pretty amazing stuff that happened. TKO played a couple times. One of the shows was Culprit's first performance live as a band after they merged together from Orpheus and Amethyst. Perennial played. One of the handful of shows where Jeff Tate sang with the guys from the Mob, which was the other 4 musicians from Queensryche. And this was the first time that he sang with them, and eventually led to him singing on the demos, which led to them getting signed. And that became the 206 demo, which is, of course, a fun collectible and, kind of a neat...
It's up there in my shelf.
Yeah, it's kind of a neat one. And so he was getting up and doing metal cover songs of Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, different things, and just blew people away. It's also the place where they had done a kind of funny promotion for Def Leppard when they were in town opening for Blackfoot the first time they played the Northwest for the High and Dry tour.
Right.
And they played, and then a couple nights later they had them come over and gave them a bunch of tokens, and they signed some stuff and hung out, and they saw Myth playing. And they actually commented in the Seattle Times about, we saw this great band play. Many years later, Joe Elliott, in an interview, said that he could have discovered Queensryche, that when they saw them play, they were pretty impressed with the vocalist especially. Unfortunately, after all these years, it was still up until recently. They finally sold the property and tore the building down. And James Tolan still resides in Kirkland, where he grew up, and saw all the shows there. And we took me down there one night before they tore it down, and we took some pictures, and then he came back as it was being torn down and grabbed some bricks out of there. So we each have one, and we'll have one on display at our thing is what we hope to do. And then now you have a piece of history as well. So
there you go, everybody. A literal piece of Seattle metal rock history, which will be up there on the collectibles shelf here in the music room. From now on, keep an eye out in the videos. You'll see it right up there. My goodness. That is a wonderful gift, and like you said, a piece of history, literally right out of the walls that literally reverberated with the echoing sounds of some of the bands we really grew up loving.
Yes. So one thing I wanted to say is, we do have a website. It's, if that's okay, if I could plug it, is
please say the website.
Yeah.
It'll be in the comment section below,
okay.
So click on it there. Go ahead and tell them what it is.
It's northwestmetalworx.com, and then we also have a Facebook page. We'd like to invite everybody. We launched about a year ago, called Northwest Heavy Metal and Hard Rock 70s to 90s. And there's already over 1,000 people on it, a lot of musicians, a lot of friends, and everybody. It's been a real fun place. People are welcome to come promote bands doing reunions. We try to keep the focus within that time period, and that's the focus of the book, and that's the focus of what we're doing with the record label. But there's a lot of musicians still running around in various bands. They're welcome to promote. We just want to try to keep it to that, time period and focus of Northwest. But it's been a lot of fun and a great place. I've been able to find a lot of people through that as well for the book, so it's been really cool. So check us out. As I said, we got more stuff in the works, and thank you so much for having us on the show.
Oh yeah, thanks guys for coming. Really appreciate you joining us on the show. It'll be great to see. I'm sure we'll get a lot of comments on all this great stuff. And all you collectors out there, make sure to log on to the website. Go and buy some of this stuff that's out now, like the Heir Apparent record. I highly recommend that. The Whizkey Stik record sounds like it's going to be great. The compilation sounds like it's going to be great. The Overlord record, I'm going to be buying that. And the book, of course. Anybody who's a collector of Northwest stuff, it's going to be your Bible to collect stuff and take a look at the shows and the publications of the past. So it's really great that you three guys got together and pulled this out of the woodwork. It's been a long time coming.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Steve.
Excellent. I may be one true collector, but these gentlemen and all of you guys are all true collectors. So keep watching, and we'll see y'all next time.